Hey everybody, I'm Bob Bakert, and we're going to try something new tonight. We're here with Tim Lerch. Say hi, Tim.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
Tim is an amazing guitarist. My suggestion is Google Tim Lerch, check him out. He's all over the place. He teaches, he plays, he performs. Well known, highly respected, and I'm using him tonight as our guinea pig for a new series that we haven't really titled it yet, but it's kind of like How I Do It is sort of the working title for this. And the idea that we have here is that Tim's going to pick a song, which he already did, and we'll tell you that in a minute. And then he's going to play a bit of his arrangement of it. And we're going to try to find out why he made the choices he made, considering the chords that he had to work with in terms of his voicings and the way he approaches the song. So the song that we're going to use tonight is Misty, great Errol Garner tune. And I think probably we will, in the editing, we'll show the chart. We're probably going to have to use a different chart, one that's not copywritten by anybody, but that's a whole other story. But I think the way to go about this, Tim, is why don't you talk a little bit about the song in general, and then we'll talk about, and then play a little bit of it, maybe the first, first A section, and then we'll start to dissect it and see what we get. How's that sound?
Very good. Misty is, as you said, written by Errol Garner. It's in this particular key is E flat major. It does a couple of things. The opening phrase is in E flat major, and then it almost immediately does what I call a 2-5 of 4, and it goes to the 4 chord. So some people call it 1 becomes 1 dominant. Anyway, you go to the 4 chord, then the 4 chord becomes minor, and then it winds its way back to a very common turnaround in the key of E flat again. There are so many different ways to do it, and I played around with how I wanted to present it. This is a tune that I might play 20 different ways. So I'm going to try and figure out a way to describe a simpler one, and then maybe I'll show the most straightforward way to play through it, and then I'll play a slightly more nuanced and maybe you could say advanced version. Okay.
Sounds great to me.
Okay. So first bit is we're starting on the 5 chord, and what I'm going to do is the melody is this. And I'm going to play a B flat 7 chord, and then I'm going to play an E7 sharp 9 chord, and then I'm going to play an E flat major 7th chord. Okay, so you hear this sound. Now it goes to 2/5 of 4. That's a bit of a stretch, so you might say, and then to the 4 chord, A flat. I play A flat 6, change the bass note to the 3rd of that chord. Now it goes to 4 minor, flat 7 dominant. That's the 1 chord. The 6 chord, 2, an inversion of 2, then 5. And then a turnaround with all dominants. G7, C7, F7, B flat 7. Okay. The basic changes are like this: B flat 7, and then 1. Then what I call 2/5 of 4, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major, and then A flat minor, D flat 7. Some people call that a backdoor 2/5. 1, 6, 2, 5, and then this 3 dominant, 6 dominant, 2 dominant, 5. Okay. A couple of interesting things you might try. There's a lot of possibilities, even for these first 2 notes. And then the major 7th of E flat major 7 is the melody note. So we could say, playing around with just the B flat 7 and its flat 5 sub E7, we could play E7 first, then B flat 7, and then the E flat. Or we could flip that around and play B flat first, E7 sharp 9 next, and the 1 chord. I have a little thing that I like to do where I play. That's a little more modern-esque. I played a B major 7, move it down to an A flat major 7, and then E flat major 7. There's all kinds of beautiful color we can do on this. I think if most people opened up the real book and were intermediate guitar players, they might play something like this. That's kind of a funny reach because you got to play 2 notes to your little finger. A lot of people will shine that melody on and not play the actual melody there because it's hard. But, you know, that happens. Anyway, then there's the 4 chord, and then here's the little melody. A lot of times people just play that all by itself. Minor 9, D flat 13, and then 1, 6, 2, 5. Now what I'm doing there is this melody note is a C note, and it goes down quite low. I'm up here on an F minor 7 chord, so I decided to go to A flat 6, which is an inversion. It lays really nicely there. B flat 7 to E flat major.
Well, okay. You were starting on, I happen to have a
oh my gosh,
a tally right here, and you're starting on, you know, a B flat-ish thing.
Yeah, I would bar that instead of the way you're playing it, just because when I'm playing fingerstyle, I play the easiest possible chord that allows for the most reach. Yeah.
So, so you're choosing, you would bar that B flat. I'm playing obviously just those top notes, and show what are you playing there?
What I do is, in general, because I'm playing solo guitar, I want to leave
Hmm.
as many fingers free to play extra melody notes as I can.
Right,
So this first chord would be B flat 7, which is most basic form of this is a bar,
right,
flat seventh,
right.
third, 5, and 1. And then you can add flat 7 or 13 or any other kind of color in between. So I played B flat 7 this way, and then I played E7 sharp 9. It's a very familiar chord as a substitute for that.
You're playing.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
E7 flat 9.
E7 flat nine.
Yeah.
Well, that would be not E flat seven, but E7 flat nine.
E7 with a
Flat nine.
sharp 9.
Oh, sharp.
I might have said flat, but I meant sharp.
Okay. So you're
Yeah.
playing from this, if you will, and then you're going into that chord. So you're keeping the melody note right there on that G note. Is
Well, the
that
melody note is B flat
B flat
to G.
to G?
So for the B flat, I'm playing a B flat 7. And then for the G, I'm playing E7 sharp 9.
All right. And
And
then
then
why
moving, go ahead.
just for educational purposes
Yeah.
for the G you said you're playing?
For the G note, melody note, I'm
Yeah.
playing an E7,
Right.
which is a tritone sub or a flat 5 sub of B flat, which is the
Right.
chord that's on the page. Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, yep, I'm
You can do either one. You can play E7 first, B flat 7 later,
right.
next, second, or you can do the opposite. And what we get there is, and this matters a great deal when you're playing solo guitar, not very much if you're playing in a trio or something,
Right.
is we get a different bass note, which causes creates movement toward the root um, of the E flat chord. So we
So
have,
let's continue on. So we got the beginning. That's the look at me phrase. Look at me.
yeah,
I'm helpless
look
as
at
a
me,
kitten up
right.
a. Let's get to the helpless as a kitten up a tree and see where we're at with that.
Okay, so I'll just start from the beginning again. Right, we're playing E flat major 7, 1,
Right.
3, 5 flat 7, and then for me the most basic thing is just to play 2 melody notes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start from the top. You're gonna play your.
So we're going to start from the beginning, and we're going to look at the first phrase, which is the "look at me" phrase,
Mhm.
coming to a E flat major 7th chord with the major 7th in the melody,
Right.
D note there. So 1, 3, 5, 7.
Right.
And then probably is the easiest thing to do is just play the next 2 melody notes right underneath those fingers, because one of the melody notes is in the chord and the other one just means you flatten your 3rd finger up. And we're heading toward the flat 3rd of B flat minor. There's a lot of ways to do this. You could say, let's see, let's see,
Like that.
all sorts of things with movement, but let's not get too complicated. We can mostly we want to navigate the melody that lands on the E flat 7th chord, because the B flat minor chord just has a 9 up on top.
Right.
And then for this one, I might suggest or that's it. I'll try it again. Now what that is it's just a first inversion E flat 7th chord.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you'll notice is I'm using inversions a lot in this a little bit, because I find that the first inversion particularly leads to the next chord very nicely in the bass.
Mm-hmm.
So when I play this, I get a very nice half step. I can do it down here too. And that's one of the benefits of inversions. People might wonder, why do I have to learn all those inversions? because what they do is they tend to make musical pathways to certain destinations in a nice way.
Hmm.
Imagine if your chord progression is moving mostly in fourths, up a fourth, up a fourth, up a fourth, like they almost all do,
Right.
and you can play a chord, and you can play a chord that has the third in the bass. That means that it's 1 fret or 2 frets away from the next root, which is a fourth. So
Mm.
that's a strategy that I'm using frequently here. Right, there it is there. Then I'm going to go back to A flat. That's the word tree. Kitten of a tree.
Beautiful.
Now, the next little thing, I wanted a different bass note, so I moved to the third of that chord, another first inversion thing, which allows me to go and play that little melody run that says, and I feel like I'm. All right, and then another minor ninth chord, D flat 13, a first inversion, and then right back to E flat, a first inversion E flat, and then C minor. I like putting a 9 in my C minor chord. There's another first inversion chord, F minor with A flat in the melody, then A flat major 6 with the C in the melody.
Okay, for people that don't know what you mean by first inversion, why don't you just tell them what that means?
Okay, if we have a chord, let's say C, because we like to talk about music in the key of C, I can play a C chord like that. Now, an inversion means that you use something other than the root in the lowest, so in the bass.
Mm-hmm.
So C, the next note up from C in a C chord is E. So if I move up the fingerboard so that there's an E right here and I play a C triad above that, I have what's called an inversion. And it just reshuffles the notes and puts a new note in the melody and a new note in the bass. Still the same 3 notes, actually.
Three notes are there, they're just in a different order, if you will.
Right. And we think of inversions as being described by what notes in the bass.
Mm-hmm.
So a root position chord has the root in the bass. A first inversion chord has the third in the bass. A second inversion chord has the fifth in the bass, and a third inversion chord would have the seventh in the bass if there's a seventh in the chord. So it's a little bit of a shorthand. I can say C over E, or I can say a first inversion C major chord. So when I have an F minor chord, a first inversion F minor 7 turns out to be an A flat 6. Now we get to the bridge. We're on the bridge, Bob.
I heard it.
And the last eight's the same as the first bit. I'm elaborating a little bit.
I like it.
Anyway,
It's beautiful. So I'm hearing a lot of voices moving, different directions, which is, counterpunctual almost, for people want to start using that language. So basically, I mean, there's no basic about it. I mean, you're using you're using chords, and you're basically putting the melody usually high up in the voicing, and you're picking voicings that allow you to have some movement. Is that fair statement?
yeah, I think the melody's written by the composer. The bass
Yeah,
line is representative of the roots of the chords that are written by the composer.
right.
The place where we have leeway is in the inner voices and how they're coloring. Here's something that might be fun and interesting. Maybe I should have started with this. I teach this way. If you're learning a tune for the very first time, I think there's a couple of steps that could be taken. The first step is to learn the melody. Now let's just stay with that much of it so far. Now, the next thing to do is to add to that melody the roots of the chords as they're written on the chart. And now we have a nice little duet.
Yeah.
And you can elaborate, and maybe you could say, I moved the bass around a little bit following chord tones. I played the root, maybe then I played the fifth on the second half, and then maybe I played the root again, and then maybe a third or a flat seven, depending on where the things move to. A couple of different ways to do that. What happens then, though, is once you establish what the duet of the bass and the melody sound like together, a couple of things will occur. One thing is that you play the melody properly, and most often the biggest complaint that I have about a solo guitar performance is that the person isn't playing the melody beautifully. They're kind of doing a thing where they're playing the melody until it's too hard to play the melody, and then they're cheating with some sort of a variant that matches up with the chords that they know.
Right.
Right, and I've seen it so much. I know we all do it. It's not a big crime, but it's common, and I think it's important to address.
Right.
Right?
It's what separates separates the players a little bit. When
It
you
might be, but I don't
yeah
think it has to. I think that anybody can play the melody properly if they don't put the chords first.
right.
That's why I don't like the term chord melody, because it puts the word chord first.
It's a melody chord.
I think it should be melody with accompaniment or something, but
Yeah.
that's not as easy to say.
No,
That's why I always think
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
solo guitar. But so if I play the melody and I can play it nicely, I typically would learn it along the fingerboard on the top 2 or 3 strings.
Hmm.
This melody needs to go down to the G string. And then you add these bass notes. Um, oh, sorry, I did what I just complained about. That's kind of a funny fingering, or that's it. And then, right? Oops, sorry.
Hmm.
Now, you'll notice that when I'm playing this bass note and this melody note, I'm almost holding down a chord anyway.
Right.
So what happens is when I establish where the bass note is going to be and where the melody is going to be in relationship to it, I don't have about a million options for what inner voices to play. I have maybe two or three that I can reach. And one of the things that that does is it takes away the overwhelming realm of possibility and allows the player to focus on just a few possibilities that they can then make a good choice about.
I think something that that confuses players that are trying to, play their first solo guitar pieces.
Or their 20th one.
Yeah, so they got the Mickey Baker book out, and they can play, the A flat major 7, and the A flat major 6, and
Right.
they see that. But the other voicings that you're playing are also relatively simple voicings, but you're not playing all of the notes.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And and s-
If you see A flat major 7th on a chart and you think it's this,
right.
but the melody note is on the G string, well, then you just, what are you going to do with that finger? If you play it, then then you hear something like this. Then that's the first wrong note because it's
Right.
easier than that one. Then you hear this, right? Well,
Right.
the melody note's here, and but then it's being harmonized because that's the grip that everybody knows. They play it like that. So that's one of those kinds of things that
Yeah,
to make
they'll
your
throw that. I think that's, they'll throw they'll throw that note on top, and it sort of hides the melody a little bit.
it does. It harmonizes the melody, and that may be what you want. But if you haven't done it, if you haven't played the melody in thirds up until that point, and then you play that note, it's going to obscure the melody. And mostly, it's just a right hand issue. It's not a left hand issue. You can play, you can finger that note because that's the chord you know,
But not play
and
it.
then just not play it.
So
Right? That's the
you
easiest
were doing
way.
something earlier. This is kind of the fun that I wanted to get into. You were doing something earlier with the E flat voicing, and you moved it into 3 different positions. Do you remember? Do you recall that? You were playing
Uh,
you're playing the E flat here. I'm sorry, you're playing. You can't see my guitar, but you can play
I can
that
see it.
that position on the E flat. But then you're also
Yes.
moving up, up in
Okay. Oh,
you're playing
okay. I
in
think
this
what
area, but without the E flat on the bottom. And then you were
right,
making
right,
some 9 things, and all. And
right.
so when you're doing these things and you're moving the bass around, what I was watching you do is you weren't necessarily, um, you know, so many people want to play the grips, as you just mentioned. They're going to play the if we were well in this key, we're going to go with the A flat, and then this, they're going to play regardless of where the melody note is in that grip. That's where they're going to be. And
Right.
and so one of the things that you did so beautifully was you grip be damned. You played, the chord, or you might have even just done a dyad. You might have just done like 2 notes from the chord, or a simple triad without maybe the bass note that everybody's used to hearing or used to seeing, because you're moving it maybe to the third. When you did that E flat, if you play the E flat with this, with that bass note, if you will, the
Yeah.
G on the bottom,
Yes.
um, you know,
First inversion.
first inversion. Thank you. So, uh, talk about that a little bit, about not needing to have all of the.
Okay. Yeah, I will be happy to. One of the things that we can rely on is that even non-musicians have a musical memory. So you notice that every time I played an inversion, right before it, I had played a root position chord. So if I played this, so I went, right, it was on the E flat 7 chord that I did that movement, not the E flat major. But so when I play this, there's the root. there's the third, and then here's the new bass note of the A flat chord, or I could come down here and hit it down an octave lower. So because we have a musical memory, a couple of things happen. We can move the bass line around, because a bass player doesn't just hit the root the whole time. They play the root, then they play another note, then they play another note. Well, basically, in a solo guitar situation, we are this player, and so we take a little bit of that strategy. And so you might play the root, followed by the third, followed by the fifth. So for instance, I might play, I'm not maybe in this song, but I might play something like this. That's all E flat 7. I played the root in the bass, then the third in the bass, then the fifth in the bass, then the root in the bass. Right,
That's
so
beautiful, Tim.
All right, so if I'm
Yeah.
playing a blues, let's just take a little bit of a side trip here. If I'm playing a blues and I want to play in the key of B flat, that's all B flat 7 with different chord tones in the bass. So if I play root in the bass, third in the bass, fifth in the bass, flat 7th in the bass, fifth in the bass, root third in the bass, root, then I can play a melody. I just played boom, bum, beep, beep, da, ba, boo, ba, doo, dee.
And you're really not putting much in the middle there, really.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need much if the
Yeah.
melody's moving around. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can play one note. Maybe I played a third there.
the bass is moving around and the melody's moving around. Yeah.
And then I go to the 4 chord and I can do all the same type of thing. Sorry, I'll do it here. And then back to B flat. All of that was just a melody, a bass line, and incidental chord tones in the middle that I could grab.
So it's a good idea to learn inversions.
Oh, it's not even a good idea. It's necessary. If you're playing in a funk band, or if you're playing in a classic rock band, or if you're playing in a soul band or a salsa band, or in a show band, then you're playing different kinds of music. I mean, you have to learn how to play these littler bits, you know? And a lot of times people are playing them already. They just don't maybe know what they're called, or they just see them all as being part of one thing. That's common too.
Well, and it gets back to the what's the most important note in the chord. And the notes are usually either the third or the seventh. The third determines if
I'm
it's
not
mature
sure. I'm
minor.
not sure if I would say the most important note in the chord is any particular note. I think it's completely situational. I don't mean to disagree with you. I think the thirds and the sevenths are really important because they determine the chord quality.
Right.
But for instance, what if I have just played a third
Mm-hmm.
in a chord and it establishes it as a dominant seventh chord, and then the next voicing that I play, I'd rather have maybe a ninth and an 11, and
And
I
we
don't have
remember
enough.
the third. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
I don't have enough fingers for another third, but I just played the third a second before,
Right.
and the musical memory still allows for that to be there. I
Right.
just wrote this book called the Melodic Jazz Guitar Chord Dictionary, and one of the problems that I faced is that all of the chords seen as individuals had to be complete. So if it was a minor chord, I wanted it to have a flat third in it. But there are very many times when I might play in a chordal passage that is in a situation where there's a minor chord as the bar harmony. I
Right.
might play a voicing or two with no third at all.
Yeah.
But I played a third earlier and I'll play a third again, and so it gives me a freedom. But when you get a collection of chords that are called minor, you expect all of them are going to have a
They're
flat
gonna
third in
have
them.
the flat third in
Yeah.
there. No, I
So
mean,
yeah.
that's yeah. You're yeah. I totally agree with you. I get it.
I have a concept that I call uh, fluid harmony, and fluid harmony is different than gripology. It, it starts it's no, it starts with gripology because that's how we learn these things.
Hmm.
But as soon as you learn a grip or a set of grips, you want to sort of dissolve them into each other.
Right.
So if I have a C major seventh chord like this, and I have another one here, and I have another one here, and then I have another one here, those are all the same four notes.
Right.
C major 7 1 5 7 3, C major 7 3 7 5 1, sorry 3 7 1 5. Then second inversion 5 1 3 7, and third inversion 7 3 5 1. But now I've learned those. I can use them interchangeably. I can play one or two or three or four of them in a row. It all depends on what the musical situation requires. But I can also glue them together with a melodic concept, which is to say play the rest of the notes in the key or even some chromatic notes to tie them all together. Now I just made a little melody above those chords.
I
And
can't
if I
believe
were very
you could
clever,
sing that note.
I
Ah,
might, yeah,
ah.
I might be able to do it in the bass. Oh, sorry, I'll do it correctly in the bass. And I can combine. So eventually, the grips have to give way to what I think that most piano players can do. Certainly, orchestrators do all the time. Many of my favorite inspirations are Nelson Riddle and Billy May and people who write for orchestra because they aren't bound by, this gripology method. um, we have to learn it as guitar players, but then we have to, as soon as we learn it, we have to start dissolving it so that the things aren't hard fixed.
Hmm.
If you've got, let's say in Misty, I go, sorry, right? Now, if I'm just hanging, what do I do, right? So maybe I could play. And then play a few chords in between to another inversion of E flat major. Now what I just did there is instead of playing where I just played the chords on the page, I played chords in the key that led from one to the next. Now I reharmonized the bit and I also played a different melody because it was something that I might do if I were, improvising or something. But that still sounded like B flat minor to E flat 7, although I was using a bunch of other in-betweeners to connect it all up.
Why don't you play through this thing? Just play through it one time. Do you want to
Okay.
do that? Mhm. Mm.
And then I might continue to play for another, 10
Yeah,
minutes or
sure.
something. Doing variation.
Beautiful stuff, watching your mind work and how you're putting all this together. So a couple things that I just want to add before we say goodnight or say goodbye. If people want to get a hold of you for lessons or explaining some of this and what you, because you obviously you teach a lot,
Mhm.
and you got a really big YouTube presence. There's a lot of information that you put out on YouTube free of charge. I mean, it's just there for the world. I saw videos on dynamics and just all kinds of different fun things and the things that most people don't talk about it. So they can get a hold of you at what's your website?
TimLerch.com, Lerch, TimLerch.com. And most of the things that I do, YouTube things, um, and TrueFire things, and my merch store, and all my lessons are on the website, or there's links on the website at the very beginning.
Right.
I have, at the current moment, 8 courses on TrueFire. There's 2 more that will be shot in January. So I don't know when this is going to come out, but if it's around then, it'll be another 3 months after
Oh,
that.
it'll be before then. We're gonna get working on this one.
I have an Instagram page, which is basically just sort of a "Hey, here I am" page, and a YouTube page where I'm working on communicating and presiding over a community of folks who like what I do, and I have a True Fire channel and a Patreon page, all of which are available, linked to my website.
Well, that's very, very cool.
There's all
Well,
sorts of ways.
there's all sorts of ways to get a hold of you, and thank you for your contribution to society.
Well,
So,
somebody asked me once, and this might sound a little bit highfalutin, but it helps me.
mhm,
Um, what are you here for? Right?
yeah,
What are you doing? Do you want to get famous? Do you want to get rich? Do you want to, have people admire you? Or do you want, all the things a musician has to look into this question?
mhm,
Um, I think the answer that helps me the most is I want to add something of beauty to the world
there you go.
in some small way. So I tend to play on that side of the spectrum that adds something I think is going to give people a moment of peace, or some calm feeling, or something that they find beautiful, maybe exciting as well. But that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, but
Whatever
you
it
can't. That's pretty darn good as far as I'm concerned.
is.
Um, it's funny you say that. I'm actually started a book, and one of it may be the whole book or pamphlet or chapter is why do we perform?
Hmm.
And there's people that perform for a variety of reasons. Some people perform to pick up chicks. So,
And why
back
you
when I
why
was
we
back when
start
I was
performing?
19, what?
Yeah, yeah, right. Why we start performing,
Yeah,
hopefully, isn't why we continue to perform over time,
right.
because sometimes what gets you in the game isn't really what keeps you in the game.
No, absolutely. So, and one of the answers is, to communicate with my fellow man. And and there's an answer. One of them is some people like to show off, and I've really granulated this whole thing. So, but it's funny that you brought that up. Why am I here? What am I doing? And you're doing it beautifully. Keep doing it, sir.
Thank you very much, Bob.
So this is Bob Bakert with Tim Lerch. We want to thank Tim for his time this evening. Thank you very much, Tim, for doing this with us tonight. We appreciate it. Tim Lerch, ladies and gentlemen,
Thanks,
guitarist,
Bob.
guitarist for the guitarist, great educator, wonderful player, highly intellectual. Love that. Has figured out a way to make the mind go to the strings without having it get in the way too much.
Yeah,
So
right. Right.
That's pretty nice stuff, man. Thank you so much, Tim. Really
Hey, thanks,
appreciate it.
Bob. Thanks for having me.
Good night now. Bye bye.